Hello and welcome everybody to another Career Revolution interview series, the place to be to listen and hear and get inspired from people who've done unbelievable, courageous and extraordinary things in their career. I'm Licia Dewing and I'm a career strategist. I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa. I work globally around the world and I get to zoom in and out in this little studio interviewing and talking to people who've lent into courage over comfort to revolutionize their career. And today we have a very special guest. Today our guest is Karen Lowe, who is the director of the South African movement, the 4-day work week, or the 4-day week. This is something that's incredibly exciting to South Africa. We're about to start the pilot in March. Karen will tell us more information about that. But I want to know, who is Karen and how did she get excited about this movement, reduced work time and the 4-day week? And Karen's going to really tell us about her story and her career trajectory. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments. You may be listening to this on LinkedIn Live. You might be catching it on replay, on podcast version, or you might actually be watching it on YouTube. And all of those platforms allow you to ask questions. So this is a time for you to really kind of come in close, lean in, have a listen to Karen, and let's get her on stage.
Hello, Licia. So nice to see you.
Hello, Karen. It's so great to see you and to have you here in this kind of space that allows you to share more about you and your story. So I'm going to start straight off by inviting you to tell us about your career. What has it been so far? And now that you're in this role of 4-day work week, pilot participant, and like you're flying the plane for South Africa and the African continent, there's so much that we're going to talk about there. But let's just go back a bit and talk about what got you to where you are now.
Thanks, Licia. I've had a rather checkered, interesting career. I must admit it's been full of twists and turns and interesting choices, and perhaps reflecting, I might have made some different choices, but I sure wouldn't change where I've ended up right now. It's a very, very exciting place to be, somewhat altruistic adventure, the 4-day week, as opposed to a work or career move. But it's certainly opening and unlocking some interesting doors for me, and I think playing to some strengths that I've gained, throughout my career. So if I take you back a little bit to my varsity days, I actually, started with psychology and drama, actually psychology, drama and English major. So I, Maritzburg varsity, and I had every intention of becoming a clinical psychologist. So, I got as far as my honors, and I decided that career path was actually not for me, that I wouldn't cope particularly well with all of the stress and, in the therapeutic environment. So I decided to do a postgraduate in marketing, and that was at the AAA school. And while I was studying, I was lucky enough to get offered 2 employment opportunities during my academic year. One was at Millward Brown Impact, which was a research house. And there I was doing a lot of their qualitative focus groups in the evening. And my day job in the morning was working for Ogilvy and Mather in the media department. So I had a very interesting, sort of exposure to the work world while I was studying, which was great. One, I knocked the socks off the postgrad year because I was getting all of this, real life work experience. And I think that sort of firmly set my career trajectory. So I picked Millward Brown over Ogilvy and Mather. I didn't like the media environment particularly well. I found it very boring and very stressful because back in the day, all we did all day was Telmar runs that basically told you what was going on and where to spend your money. And we didn't have any of the, plethora of media that we have at our disposal today. It was really boring. And I just didn't feel it was a future career for me. But I loved research, and I think it's still a passion of mine. I was running both the qualitative division at Millward Brown, doing focus groups for all sorts of interesting industries, research. We were doing a lot of ad tracking. I mean, we even tracked the inception of Vodacom and MTN back in the day. We were looking to see what the communications and the efforts were and how it was impacting brand. And from there, I moved into a small marketing consulting firm, and with every intention of going overseas at some point. So I was sort of playing around with how do I get more business strategy, more marketing strategy, moving out of that research space a little bit. And I really fell into a sales role. So I not only had to do business and marketing strategies, but I also had to onboard and recruit clients. And I think that was very valuable lessons for me in terms of business development and how you approach sales funnels, etc. And then I decided, since my dad had not allowed me to join the Air Force, which is what I wanted to do, believe it or not. So if you actually ask me what I'd rather be doing with my career, that was it. I wanted to be the first
flying planes.
Africa, ironically. I didn't get there, but it's still on my bucket list to fly a fighter jet or at very, very least a chopper one day. So I've got an adrenaline junkie side.
I've been close enough to you in the build up to the pilot. Most people could say that you actually are flying a plane right now, and it's the movement of the 4-day week. You're the pilot, and I've heard a lot of pilot participants call you the fearless leader or captain, my captain. So,
matriarch.
Matriarch. You might actually be in the plane that, it might not look like a plane, but you are actually flying something through the country.
Oh, thank you, Licia. It certainly does feel like I'm steering something, and it's certainly got some components of adrenaline. I can't deny that, but flying was always a passion. Ironically, and probably this is totally inappropriate for a podcast around career revolution, but I even dated a pilot just to annoy my father and get myself into that environment. Anyway, it wasn't to be. So I decided to do what most students had done when they finished their degrees. After 3 years of working, I thought, I'm going to take a gap year. So I got on a plane and went to Australia. I ran out of money after about 3 months of backpacking and was forced to go back into a work environment to support myself. And this was, again, a very exciting, sort of learning opportunity for me. So I started door-to-door sales, as one does when you're backpacking, for a company called AAPT Smart Chat, which was like an opposition to our telecom. So they had a dominant network, and there was this competitor. So I went from that to running their call center. So I got some really interesting experience in terms of call center management, and I spent about 6 months in Melbourne doing that. And then I had sufficient money saved to go onwards with my travels, and I continued to travel for a little while. And then I came back and wasn't too sure what to do. And I had, from my days at the AAA School of Advertising, I had a lot of contacts. So I reached out to the Cape Town branch and I said, I'm really interested in sort of getting into some education space. And they took me on as registrar. So very junior position. And I loved it. I was screening and onboarding students from across all of the academic years and postgrads. And then I got into a little bit of lecturing. I was filling in. And then I suppose it's serendipitous when these things happened. A space opened up for me to take on a more full-time lecturing post. So we hired a new registrar. And from there, I became faculty head. So I was running the sort of all the programs, educational programs. I was training, I was teaching, I was doing part-time and full-time lecturing, and I loved it. And I think if I reflect back on my career, it was probably some of the happiest years that I spent. And I do dip in and out of education. I still, Stellenbosch Academy of Design and Photography, I was there for lecturing marketing 1 through 3rd year. I've done lots of sort of guest presentations at Vega, so very much around my area of authority of brand marketing, communications, etc. And then I had my first child. Actually, hang on, I've missed a step. I left the AAA school because I didn't want to be a full-time academic, and I started a consultancy called Mind the Gap, which was marketing consulting, marketing communications, branding, etc. and just wanting to be more self-employed. I think I realized at that stage that I wasn't quite cut out for corporate structures, and that I was perhaps more suited to flying my own plane. So I kept lecturing, but I then sort of diversified into a lot of marketing, consulting, communications, etc. But drawing on my past strengths in research, sales, telecommunications, by that stage, there weren't many industries that I hadn't at least had some exposure to. So I had a really good bedrock of experience by that stage. And then one of my clients said, come on full time. And I thought, okay, let's try this again. And it was a Danish company. And Licia, I must admit, I think this sort of 18 months of my career really toughened me up and sharpened my skills, because I was both in charge of marketing, but also in charge of the sales for the contract packing division. So we were manufacturing products for the baby industry, baby wipes and cleaning products, etc. But we were not just marketing our own brands, we were contract packing for the retail brands. So I got exposure to the buyers at the ShopRites and the, Pick and Pays of the world, which was, it was nerve-wracking. Those annual trade negotiations was something else. I even went on a negotiation skills course just to equip me with the tools that were needed to do product listings and annual trade negotiations. So I was managing a sales force, managing a marketing team, and managing all of the business development on the contract packing side, which was a very exciting time. And then I got pregnant and had my first baba, and decided that it was time to go back to my entrepreneurial roots. And of course, as one does when you have your first child, I decided I was going to do something in the mom and baby industry. So a friend of mine and I decided to rewrite the whole of the What to Expect When You're Expecting series. And we launched a little online website called Baby Online, which still exists to this day, ironically. Wow. And then I started a company called Tot Pod, and I imported toys from Canada and Australia, and I had a website, and I was making bling dummies, believe it or not. And by this stage, I had my second child, Oliver, and I was at night running toys, selling toys, dispatching things, really quite new to the e-commerce world, sort of, I don't know, well, it was about 13 years ago now. It was a long time ago, so it was new. And I was sitting there at night with my dummies and Swarovski crystals, literally gluing crystals onto these dummies, and the demand was insane. I had South African flags and boats and hearts and all sorts of things. So that was a nice little craze that I went through, and then I decided I needed to go back to the real world. And I was asked to consult on a project. And there I met my business partner, Michelle Rolfe, and we were pregnant at exactly the same time. She was 2 weeks ahead of me. We hit it off like a house on fire. And I thought, I'm going to continue consulting. I've never not worked right the way through both of my children, but it was always on my own terms. And Michelle phoned me out of the blue the one day. I think the boys were about 3 months old. And she came through to my house in Somerset West, and she said, let's start a business. So I was like, okay, what business do you want to start? She said, let's start a PR agency. And I was like, no. I don't do PR. Of all of the communication that I have been exposed to, as honestly, I was quite rude about it. I was sort of like, yeah, that's for, the pretty girls in short skirts that sort of nod their heads at clients. I was like, I really didn't have a good idea of PR. And Michelle was, MD of Magna Carta PR agency in her day. So I thought, okay, well, let's do it. I'll bring my stuff, you bring your skills, and let's start a business. So we launched Go Forward together. And that was 13 years ago. And I mean, we were partners for 8 years before she immigrated, or 9 years actually before she immigrated. But it was an incredible journey. So I was traveling into work every day. We got to over 20 staff in a very small space of time, managing brands that it was just such a happy decade. We had the DHL stores, we had big brands, small brands, Spear. We launched Zara in South Africa. We really got to work on some blue chip companies, some very exciting events. We even brought Seal to South Africa for a private party. So I channeled all of my energies into really pitching sales development, client relationships, strategy, which were really my strengths, And Michelle brought out that communication side where the relationships with the media and managing events, she was extraordinary at it and still is. And we just suited each other so well from a partnership perspective because we had such different skill sets. And slowly but surely, the types of clients that I acquired were more business to business oriented, which was, I think, again, meant to be in my journey. I kept going back into the business to business space and moving away from the business to consumer space. And I continue to run Go Forward. And I think my clients are quite diverse. I have small and large clients, and I do some very interesting work, but most of it is in the stakeholder communications space. So, for example, on behalf of one of my clients, I do a lot of work with healthcare practitioners. So instead of speaking about yogurt and its benefits and brand, I bring the science and the evidence on behalf of my client to the HCP market. So it's very strategic, high-level communications, building relationships on behalf of an organization. And I have stayed true to that space. It's a key strength of mine. And whilst I do a lot of events and webinars and planning, they are very much business to business focused, relationship building focused. So I continue to do that as my day job, as I call it. And during COVID, just before COVID, I launched Zara.com in South Africa. So we had this huge, big upswell, and my book of work was booked solid for 18 months. I had events, projects, enormous projects planned, and COVID hit, and I lost every single one of them, apart from one client that was brave enough to do an online event instead of an in-person event. So it was a very challenging time, and what I did during that time was, well, I've got time now, so I'm going to have to upskill. So I took a coaching course, I took a story to stage, keynote speaking, and I upskilled. I did some resilience work, coaching. I really just immersed myself in academics again. And when COVID, left, I decided to, push forward with Go Forward. And really, I suppose this brings me to the point of how I got to the 4-day week.
And I'm going to pause you there. Yeah. I'm going to pause you there because you've brought us up to speed, and then we're going to talk about the 4-day week. What an interesting story. What a fascinating mosaic. Twists and turns, but that's it, right? That is it. I mean, it is indicative of a lot of people in our generation who, well, I went to varsity to study the degree. The degree was psychology. I hated it. I pivoted at my degree. I went to marketing, and from there, that's what it's been. There've been many revolutions all along the way, and I'm so pleased that you're here, that you're able to tell this story. And I didn't expect anything else from you in a way, but I've learned so much from you by just hearing what got you to where you are now. And the lessons inherent in what you've just told us, anybody listening here, what people can extrapolate and take away is it didn't matter what came across your path. You kind of just took action. You just kept moving. You just took action and you just kept going. And it wasn't about, well, wait, I can't do this. The world, I've got this degree. I can't go and sell, be a sales girl in Australia. I'm here to, I've got a degree. I need this. It was just about you moving forward. I want to use the expression failing forward, but I'm not saying that anything about the experience that you've had and everything or anywhere fails, but it was serendipity and meeting your courage. You saying, right, I want to get an education. I want to explore this as a career. I'll start at the bottom as a registrar. And then you became the head of faculty. Like you were prepared to do the things that perhaps many people and many of us think we shouldn't be doing if we have the qualification or if we have the experience, when in actual fact, you kind of walked the peaks and the troughs all the way through. Amazingly so, with courage. So
it's important, Licia, to, if you don't have a linear career path, I think there are always opportunities to upskill yourself. And the best place to start is actually in the trenches. It always has been, because you learn what's going on. And I think it makes you a better manager. I think it makes you a better supplier, because you have an understanding of every single role in an organization, not just the industry at large. You you're more humble and empathetic as a leader. You have more insights than you would ever have gotten going straight into a high level position. And I think, I think that's taught me a lot of humility. Sales taught me a lot of courage. There was a lot of fake it till you make it, a lot. I mean, I remember listening to specialists on body language, stay large, the power pose. I was in the male world, and they were awful. The buyers were awful. And I used to have to take Rescue Remedy and psych myself up at these meetings. But I came out with a very interesting skill set. And I was always terrified that I was too much of a generalist. I never really specialized in a niche. And I think it's, in today's world, it's worked to my advantage, because I understand the entire ecosystem of a business, from logistics to marketing, which allows me a unique place at the table from a business perspective.
And I've heard from you that, if we want to call them passions or things that really light you up, in the early days, it was marketing. It was like, how do people sell? It had that, how do people put things out there? How do people sell people? What are the words? What are the systems? How do they do it? So that marketing ethos really interested you from studies versus how to get into people's heads from psychology.
Absolutely.
But then it was research. You wanted to know, why were things landing? So research comes through all the time. And then I love the way you talked about adrenaline, wanting to be pilot and then not. So research and adrenaline, combine those together with the experiential know-how that you had, the smarts that you gathered along the way, the smarts for people, the smarts for business, the smarts for closing, all the things that you gleaned in that career. But I'm fascinated by this research and adrenaline combination, and then education comes in. And then later down the line, education comes in, and you're like, oh, how do we educate people? How do we share information? How do we impact minds? So research, adrenaline, and education. I mean, if that's not a job description for where you are now, launching a massive shift to the way that we work in South Africa. And we've seen it take off around the world. We've seen it completely explode and, benefit so many people. And here you are saying, I'm going to do this. And I believe in our country, and I believe in the continent, and we're going to get this done. So the pilot with a passion for research and adrenaline, and at heart an educationalist. I mean, I've seen you, when you share information about the 4-day work week, you share it from let me help you understand, let me take you along. It's not a sell, it's anything but that. You are an educationist. You want to inspire people, and you want to plant a seed within their hearts for them to be able to take what they want from it. And that's really what I think the best educationists are. They're here to give us the information and let us say, this is how I take it, and this is what I'll do with it, and create critical thinking, ask the right questions. And I've seen you do that, whether it's been live on air, whether it's been one-on-one with a big corporate, or whether it's been in the hosts, the hundreds of webinars that you've run through this process. So would you say, I mean, I'm putting you on the spot here, that with this wonderful combination of these elements that has made, that sort of got you to where you are now, Karen Lowe, that you're walking your purpose, you're stepping into a space and a place that the marketing girl, the Antipodean traveling around Australia doing the sales, even the sort of entrepreneur with the bling dummies, which I love. I think that's so brilliant. You had no idea that was to come. I mean, 4-day, 4-day, like that just didn't even exist when we were carving our careers in the sort of, 80s and 90s. It was nothing. And yet here you are in such an exciting place. Is this a purpose place for you?
Very much so. And I think it was an accidental purpose. It was serendipitous. It was definitely, I think as part of what I do from a strategic perspective, it's always been steeped in research. So whenever I'm writing a strategy, whenever I'm approaching a project, I go back to that as the baseline. And we kept coming across this trend this 4-day week. And I was hearing from clients burnout, staff attrition, post-COVID, tension in the workplace. And it just struck me that research has this ability to be a very safe space for organizations to try and experiment. And it is a movement that's bigger than me. It's not mine. It is for everybody. It has a drive and a purpose on its own. And whilst I was skeptical at first, after a few conversations with Global, the penny dropped that not only could I use all of the skills that I had acquired over my, career, I could tap back into my biggest strengths, which were, using the communications, using the research, using my stakeholder communications ability, and obviously this network that I've built over a period of time. And to be able to launch something, I think you called it a moonshot moment for South Africa, Licia, when we first chatted. And I think I felt that. I thought, we're always left behind. In fact, Global, when I first approached them, said, 2025, 2026, South Africa, you're not on our radar. And I'm like, oh yeah, we are on your radar. We're starting now. And we just jumped, September, off we went. We're starting in February. Pilot's going to go. Let's see what we do. And I think, listening to tales of productivity and revenue positivity and all of that is really important. I get that. It's we're in business to make money. That's the bottom line, really, at the end of the day. Excuse the pun. But for me, there were two bigger stories at play here. One was the well-being, and I know for myself what it's like to experience burnout and fatigue and anxiety and stress. Being a working mom, it's quite a unique space. Unless you're one, I don't think you really understand just how, much of a melting pot that is and how many skills you actually acquire as well, being in that environment. But I think for me, an initiative that could potentially change well-being markers in South Africa, where we're one of the world's worst, was for me, if a research experiment with a small group of companies can improve well-being to that extent globally, let's try it here. And if we can shift that at scale further down the line, then we're really onto something. But I think going back to productivity and revenue, on the other side, organizations participating, we're seeing improvements in productivity, most of them, revenue positive, at the end of the pilot period. And that leads me to unemployment. And the economists are likely to disagree with me, but if you have a look at the cost of absenteeism, so you improve your well-being markers, you're reducing absenteeism, so you're dropping, you're impacting the bottom line. Improving productivity and efficiencies and focusing on outputs means growth, if you're doing it right, which means opportunity for new hires. And I think that's employment, but there is further than that, your day off or your 20% of time off that you are gifted. South Africans have a unique ability to pay things forward. And I felt that, again, if we could do this at scale, we could go into the mentorship, learnership space and stop seeing our youth as a national crisis and start seeing them as our biggest opportunity for future growth in South Africa and across the African continent. We have a superpower and a weapon like nothing else. And it's different to the rest of the world. We don't have the aging populations. We've got the young populations. The future of work is here. No better time to challenge the status quo and, where we've come from and where we're going. And I think a unique opportunity to define it for ourselves as a developing economy, as opposed to benchmarking ourselves against New Zealand, Australia, Europe, UK, Canada, North America. So what does it look like in South Africa? And Lisa, just an opportunity really to help and grow and mentor and ask people to join this movement. Work time reduction is the way of the future because it has such a positive impact on the individual at work. Charlotte Lockhart always says we borrow our people from their lives. And I think for your followers and listeners, you're advising them on careers, to have that mindset, I am being borrowed from my life, is a very powerful departure point. My day, I used to get on leave late, just because I needed to be there. It was a show of productivity. I wasn't being productive all that time. And I think youngsters have a very different view and value on their time and work ethic. So yes, we're launching a June pilot. We're starting with the current 29 companies on the 1st of March alongside EU, and the June pilot is kicking off. So we're actively recruiting now, and a call to action really to companies large and small to get involved and register to be part of this cohort, or to pilot within their organization, and we're here to help you do that.
Wonderful, Karen. Well, thank you for number one, hearing the call and seeing this opportunity of flying the plane of the 4-day work week and not being afraid to jump in and start flying it. Thank you for leaning into that courage, because it is a moonshot moment. And when I first interacted with you sometime at the middle part of last year, once this thing had landed and South Africans were waking up and going, wow, that's amazing. You shared exactly what you did here, and you said, why can't we do it? Why can't South Africa do it? Why does the rest of the world get to go first? Why does the North have to tell us in the South what's happening? Absolutely. I know the movement started and it came from Perpetual Garden, which was a New Zealand company, but that to me just kind of sent shivers down my spine, and it does it all the time. So I'll add to your superpowers, proudly South African, because you're flying the flag higher than ever, and boy, do we know that it needs to be flied right now.
It does. We've got such a remarkable future ahead of us. If we could just, have some courage and challenge the status quo and have conversations that are unique to us. And I think, Licia, I must admit, for me, it's been a very exciting, adrenaline-fueled ride, but I think for different reasons this time, and perhaps because I'm nearing 50, I have a different perspective on life, but I'm surrounded by wonderful, intelligent, often women in business, in powerful positions in business. And my ability to learn outside my area of authority and interact with individuals that are at the peak of their careers has been amazing and incredibly rewarding experience for me. And I think that's why it's become my purpose. I've always wanted to see the big picture, connect the dots, but I'm always been a mentor. I've always been a collaborator. I lead because I like to lead myself, but I'm in and I roll the sleeves up, and, I don't micromanage. I don't like to hold the leash. Everyone must co-create this with me. And I think that's what's happened, because my ask has been, bring your area, bring your strategy, challenge us, help us, counsel us, and let's make this really huge in South Africa. And that's what I'd like to do. It's exciting.
So what can we do in terms of supporting and following you? I mean, you are active on LinkedIn, so I'm going to drop that at your URL in the comments here, so everybody can follow and support you there. Also, perhaps follow the 4-day week SA page. That's very active on
all of the social handles. 4-day week
all
SA.
of the social handles. Great. And if anyone wants to ask specific questions or reach out to Karen, with your permission, Karen, I'm going to drop your 4-day week email here too, so that people can get straight to it if they're interested in the June pilot, if they have any questions, or if they want to try and debate this. I mean, you're also wonderful at welcoming opinions from people and from quarters where they feel, well, I don't see how this can happen in South Africa, and just taking them through it, so yeah.
I welcome it. The debate is healthy. It moves us forward, and we need to take into consideration everyone's views. So yeah, 4dayweek.co.za, there's a lot of information about there. The information about the June pilot is about to go up. So yes, exciting times ahead, and hoping. I've got a lot of keynotes coming up to many different sectors, and I think that's maybe another ask. If you've got any followers that are wanting to talk about the 4-day week and work time reduction, HR practitioners who are in very stressful positions right now, focusing on well-being, please, I'm here to help and offer insights and expertise from the global team on what's happened. And I think that's the opportunities are endless, and I would love for everyone to be a part of the conversation.
Wonderful. Karen is the pilot who is flying this plane. Just to end off, I'm going to ask you for a super powerful tip. Like if there was one thing that you could say right now to somebody who is listening, who might be at some point of the trajectory of what you have come through in your career and will resonate with that. What's your advice from the heart? What's the bit that you're going to give that's going to help them? What's your
approach life with humility and an open-mindedness, and never stop learning, ever. Never stop learning. You're never too old. You can always change, pivot. And then I think really for working women out there, imposter syndrome is a real thing. Find ways to overcome that, because you don't need to feel like an imposter in situations. Moments of doubt don't need to turn into, debilitating inaction. You can actually do something. When you feel like an imposter, it's a signal for you to find a skill and some inner strength to show that you're not. And the need to prove yourself over and over again. You don't need to believe in yourself. It's a journey of worth. It's a journey of self-worth. It's a journey of discovery. And surround yourself with good people that believe in you and that can mentor you, and be open to everything that comes your way. There's a learning opportunity in everything, including failure. I always say there's no such thing as a failure. It's just a result. Move, learn, fail fast, learn faster, and move on. But humility and open-mindedness, I think, and a bit of courage has taken me on a very interesting journey.
Wonderful. There's an ebook, there's a book, there's a masterclass, there's a whole lot new that needs to come out. And I think this might just be the beginning. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being here. And thank you for what you're doing, believing in this happening and working for South Africa. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been delightful.